having a pull-up bar at home is a game changer for your workouts, especially if you want to be doing more minimalistic style training. But the hard part is finding the right one. There's plenty of good home setups. We made a whole video reviewing them here. But for me, none of these were perfect. They were either too flimsy or impractical, and especially if you wanted to use gymnastics rings. So I decided to build my own and found out it's actually quite easy to build something quite sturdy to the exact height that you would want. And all of this relatively cheap. The materials are under $100. So this is a complete guide on how to make your own. Let's start out with the materials you'll need. 2 4x4 pressure treated posts, and the size is going to depend on a couple factors that we'll discuss a bit later. 2 to 4 50-pound bags of quick dry cement. Again, the quantity will depend on a couple factors discussed in a bit. A 1 5/8 inch by 6 feet galvanized line post. Black is a nice aesthetic, but it will cost a bit more. For some people, this might be a bit big for the hands, so you could always go smaller. 2 5/16 inch by 4 inch galvanized hex bolts. 4 5/16 inch flat washers, and 2 5/16 inch hex nuts. Now there are a decent amount of tools that you'll need because you'll be drilling and cutting and digging. So if you don't have a lot of tools at home, you can always rent them from your local hardware store. Or if you're inexperienced and just want this all done for you with someone who has the tools already, you could hire a local handyman and they would be able to do this in a jiff. Here's what you'll need: a tape measure, a level, a post hole digger, a drill driver, a standard drill bit set, a hole saw, and a hole saw bit to fit the size of your pipe. And a couple of things you may need depending on your build are a circular saw and an angle grinder. All right, let's get to building this thing. Step 1 is figuring out your dimensions. Basically, you need to decide how tall and how sturdy you want your bar to be. And this all depends on what you intend to use it for. Basic things like pull-ups or just hanging aren't going to require too much height or too much stability. Now, if you want to do rings, you may want it to be a bit taller. And if you want to do swings or bar muscle ups, then you'll want it to be quite sturdy. And if you want to do it all, you'll want it to be quite tall and quite sturdy. So what you decide here will dictate your materials and certain aspects of your build. If you don't mind how tall or how stable, then you can get away with using 10-foot 4x4s and only 2 bags of concrete, and that will save you a few bucks. This will get your bar about 7.5 feet tall. Anything taller or more stable than this, and you'll want to buy 12-foot 4x4s. And the more sturdy you want it, the more concrete you're gonna need to buy, especially if you want it tall and sturdy. I personally used 4 bags of concrete, and my bar is 8.5 feet tall. And the last thing you'll need to consider is the bar recommended will flex a decent amount at 6 feet depending on what you're doing on it. I cut mine to 5 feet because I'm quite heavy and wanted to be able to swing without worrying about bending it. If you aren't worried about this, then keep yours at 6 feet, and that way you won't need the angle grinder to cut your post. So if you do want it to have less flex, go ahead and cut your bar to the size that you want, and do that sometime before step 4. But another option with your bar is potentially buying a more sturdy bar. It may cost you more and it'll be a different size, so you'll just need a different hole saw when we go to install the bar. Step 2, we're gonna dig some holes. First, you gotta figure out how far apart you're gonna want your posts. If you plan to use the full 6-foot bar, then you're gonna dig your posts 6 feet apart. Now, I did a 5-foot bar, so I did 5 feet apart. And to be clear, that's at the center of the hole. Now you'll need to figure out how deep you're gonna want your holes. If you're doing a short and less stable bar using those 10-foot 4x4s, then 2 feet is fine. Anything taller, and I'd recommend getting closer to 30 inches. And if you're looking for max height and stability, more like 3 feet deep. Now get to digging, because this is the most time and energy consuming part of this whole build. Step 3, you're gonna sink your posts in your holes. Place a post in one of your holes in the orientation that you'd like. Now pour your concrete. I'd recommend doing this in a few stages, especially if your hole is quite deep. Pour some concrete and then use a level to make sure your post is mostly upright. It doesn't have to be perfect right now. Now soak the concrete until you have a bit of standing water just above the level of the concrete. Then pour more concrete and repeat this until you've either used up all your concrete or you've reached the top of your hole. You may need to continually add more water as the concrete soaks it up. And now you'll want to get your posts perfectly level and in the exact orientation that you're going to want them. Step 4, we're going to cut some holes. Measure from the ground to the height that you want your bar at and leave a mark on your 4x4. Remember, you'll want to leave a minimum of 6 inches from your hole to the top of your 4x4. Now on one of your 4x4s, drill a hole with your hole saw with the exact same size bit as your pipe. It can be slightly bigger, but the closer to the same size, the better. And you'll want to make sure you're drilling in the exact center of your 4x4. You're going to drill to a minimum of 1 3/4 inches, which is the exact center of your 4x4. Now place your bar in that one hole and level it. Make a mark on your other 4x4 at the center of your bar to indicate where you're going to need to cut your next hole, and then remove your bar. And I like this method more than just measuring from the ground up on both sides to figure out where your holes are cut, because you never know if your ground isn't exactly level. Now drill your next hole and place your bar in the holes. There will be some prying involved, so once you're done, make sure to re-level your posts to get them perfect. Step 5, we're going to fasten the bar in place. Using a 5/16 inch drill bit, drill a hole through the entire of your beam at exactly the center of your bar, roughly 3/4 of an inch in from the side of the beam. Then place a washer on your hex bolt, put your hex bolt through your hole, put the other washer on, and tighten your nut using 2 adjustable wrenches or whatever you got around that can do that job. And then repeat it on the other side. Step 6 and the final step is cut your 4x4 and then just wait. If you have a bunch of 4x4 sticking out above your bar, then go ahead and chop it off using your circular saw. Again, you want to leave a minimum of 6 inches above your bar. Now at this point, it may be worth it to just check and make sure everything's level one more time before the concrete dries. And then you just wait till the concrete dries. Give it at least 24 hours to be safe. And that's it. Go ahead and get to training, or maybe even have some fun playing around. Now, to be clear, this is how I built mine, but I'm sure there's infinite different materials and tools you could use to make the same effective structure. So if you have any better ideas or questions about the build, go ahead and leave those in the comment section below. Now, if you're looking at my setup and you're like, hey, that's more than just a pull-up bar, I decided to basically do the same things we just did, but add more bars to my setup, not only making it more sturdy, but also giving me different options. I can stand on rails, I can swing on different parts. So once you've got your main pull-up bar in and you see how easy this process is, feel free to make your own jungle gym just for you. All right, thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, please like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time.